Appreciate you, brother. God bless you.
Praise the Lord, everyone. It is good to be in the house of the Lord. While you're standing, let's go to the book of Psalms, the 4th chapter. I'll begin reading in verse number 1 of Psalms chapter 4. To the chief musician, O Neganoth, a psalm of David. Hear me when I call, O God of my righteousness. Thou hast enlarged me when I was in distress. Have mercy upon me, hear my prayer. O you sons of men, how long will you turn my glory into shame? How long will you love vanity and seek after leasing? Selah. Know that the Lord has set apart him that is godly for himself. The Lord will hear when I call unto him. Stand in awe and sin not. Commune with your own heart upon your bed and be still. Selah. Offer the sacrifices of righteousness. Put your trust in the Lord. There be many that say, who will show us any good? Lord, lift thou up the light of thy countenance upon us. Thou hast put gladness in my heart more than the time that their corn and their wine increase. I will both lay me down in peace and sleep, for thou, Lord, only makest me to dwell in safety. Let me read those last 3 verses from a different translation. Many say, who can show us anything good? Smile upon us, Lord. You make me happier than those who have abundant grain and wine. I will lie down and sleep peacefully, for you, Lord, make me safe and secure. And for a few moments tonight, I want to talk to you about overcoming adversity. The Lord bless you. May be seated. Before I begin tonight, let me say what an incredible honor it is to be here. And I pray tonight that something I say helps you in your living for God. If I don't, I fail. But if I can help you in your walk with God, then I have achieved what I think God desires to happen tonight. One of the most interesting things about the Scripture is God is not like us as humans. If our kids mess up, we hide it. We try to keep everybody from knowing about it. God don't hide things. He doesn't cover up. When people did things that caused problems, he didn't hide it. He didn't make it disappear. He just lets the story be told the way the story is told. You don't find very many books written like that, and you won't find a whole lot of humans who live like that. This psalm is a very interesting psalm. Before we talk about it, we probably ought to understand when it was produced. It's not produced by an old man. It's produced by a young man. He doesn't have maturity. He hasn't lived life long enough to understand that sometimes things just happen and they're just life. You see, at my age, I understand that every day is just another day in the life of an old man. And it don't matter what the day brings. It's just another day. But in my younger years, I wasn't comfortable with it being just another day. I wanted a different outcome. He would later write, I once was young, but now I'm old. And I've never seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. For a young person to say that, it don't mean a whole lot. But for an old person to say that, it means a whole lot. So there's a difference in our lives when we tell things or we say things, and And sometimes what we say in our younger years, they're not quite as impactful as things that we say in our later years. David often made mistakes. The scripture calls him a man after God's own heart. I don't know that there's anywhere in the Bible that we can find a reason why God said that. There's nothing that tells us why he saw David as someone after his own heart. We can speculate. We can make up our reasons. But we won't find one where God said this is the reason. Why was David such an influential person, and why does he still today, he occupies a very high place in the life of Israel and even in the life of God's kids? He wrote incredible things. He had an unusual life. His life wasn't near what we think it is. His life was full of difficulties. He was not accepted by his family. If you read Psalms chapter 69, you will discover David's assessment of his own life and his own family. And he talks about his family giving him gall and vinegar instead of drink. He talks about the fact that he wasn't welcome in his own house. He was the song of drunkards. And how did all that come about? David's life is a life that we wouldn't quite understand how it could become the way it was. But one of the unique things about David is the fact that he never let life define him. Now, when he made mistakes, he often had a hard time admitting he did something wrong. It took a prophet to show up to tell him, you're a problem, David. But once he was told he was a problem, he took ownership. He admitted it. Then he tried to twist God's arm and get God to do something else other than what he said was going to happen. And that didn't work, and so he gave up that idea. But yet he's a man after God's own heart. See, David represents humans. God don't pick people who are flawless. And the reason is there's not any of those alive. When God chooses us, he chooses us with every one of our hang-ups, all of our flaws. That doesn't bother God that we have flaws. He loves us unconditionally. And he tries to make sure that all of us have resources necessary to do everything he called us or desires for us to do. He's equipped us with everything. That we're not lacking in anything. We have everything at our disposal that's necessary to be victorious. And the reason that we're not more victorious than we are is we just don't want to be. There's no other reason. I don't want to be more spiritual. I don't want to know more about the Bible. I don't want to pray more. I don't want to fast more. I fast as much as I want because that's all I'm wanting to do. And God, he doesn't force us to change that. He leaves that to us. We have to make a decision. Now, in the end, it's going to affect our reward. I'm not sure it'll keep us out of heaven if I don't sin, but just not becoming everything that I could be. It's not going to keep me from heaven. It's just going to mean I'm not going to enjoy everything he has there for me to enjoy. So here's David, and he writes this psalm. It is a psalm of David. All of them David didn't write, but this one has his name on it. It is a psalm of David. Now, the question is, what happened in David's life where he would scream at God and tell God, pay attention right now. I'm talking to you. Listen to me. Oh, you say he didn't say it. Yeah, that's exactly what he said. He said, hear me, it's imperative. So he's demanding of God, pay attention now. Not tomorrow, not next week, now. You pay attention to me because I'm in trouble. And if you don't pay attention to me, I'm really going to be in trouble. So pay attention right now. Now, I will have to admit I caused all the trouble. This problem's not somebody else's problem. This is one that I didn't do it right. So let's go see what happened. David was anointed king somewhere around 16, 17 years of age. Maybe even a little earlier. We don't know. Somewhere in his teens, he's anointed king. But he doesn't get to become king till he's 30. So at least 15 years of his life, he has to live a life where he's on the run. Saul knows he's been anointed king. That wasn't kept secret. When Samuel showed up and anointed him king, it didn't take long before Saul knew about it. You see, Israel has always had a spy network that goes all the way back in history. And they not only have a spy network, they got the best. When the world wants to find something else, they'll go ask them, and they can tell them everything that's happening because they have to pay attention. If they don't, they get annihilated. So they know everything that's happening. And Saul knew everything David was doing, and he knew when Samuel anoints David king. In the beginning, he didn't have a problem with it, but the longer he thought about it, the angrier he became, and now he starts trying to take David's life. And if he can get rid of David, then God will have to pass the kingdom to his kids instead of somebody else. And so David has to flee. And he hides in caves. And he's constantly moving from place to place. And he gets one place, the message gets back. Here comes Saul trying to find him in another place. And it's just a regular basis. He's hiding, living caves, cities, places. But one day he decided that it might be easier to live with the Philistines than to live in Israel. So he goes to the Philistines. He goes to Gath. And there he acts like he's insane. He froths at the mouth, scratches on the door, and the king wants to know, David, why are you trying to do this? We know who you are. Why are you here? Well, it's not safe there, so I just figured it'd probably be safer here than there. And you know who lives in Gath? 3 more giants. They're brothers of Goliath. And they all know what David's done. That this teenage boy has killed their brother. He didn't just kill him, he cut his head off and carried him around by his hair. How insulting. And that's where David thinks it's safer to go here and live here than it is to live where God promised me I'd be king. See, David had a whole lot of Abraham's characteristics because God said he'd bless him, but the moment a problem showed up, he ran. When the famine came, he goes to Egypt because it's easier to live there than it is where he's at. And so David's following the same path. When the trouble came, and if God anointed him king, do you think God would have let Saul kill him? Never. But sometimes we make decisions because we think our problems are way too difficult and we don't have an answer for it. So we just go out and make a rash decision because we're just tired of running. So David did. And his decision actually allowed him to become king. Achish gives him a city to reign over. That city's called Ziklag. It was about 20 miles from Gath. So Achish keeps David close enough that he can watch him to make sure he's not going to turn on him. And he lets him bring his family, his children, his 600 mighty men of valor and their families and their children. And the population of that city jumped by 5,000 to 10,000 people in just a matter of a very short period of time when David and all his men and their families showed up. But there came a day where David had to make a decision. And the decision was, whose side's he going to be on? There came a day that the kings of the Philistines, the princes of the Philistines, decide to go to war against Israel. And now David has to make a decision. Whose side are you going to be on? You're going to be on the side of the Philistines, or you're going to be on the side of Israel? And he tells Achish, I'll be on your side. I'll fight. I'll join. I'll take my men. We will stand by yours, and we will go to battle, and we will fight Israel. Now, David's got to have a whole lot of hatred to join sides with the Philistines to fight his own people. I don't know what he suffered. The Bible don't say. I don't know what he's gone through, but whatever it was, he thought it justified his decision of changing sides. So now, war's coming. What are you going to do, David? Well, I told you I would be with you. You've been good to me, so I'm going to be good to you. I'll fight on your side. Now, David, before in his life, would always ask God for his permission. But this is a decision he decides to make without God's input at all. And as a result, it caused him a lot of problems. So, Achish says, David, we're going to war. And David said, okay, when are you leaving? We're leaving tomorrow morning at daybreak. We will be there. So David and his 600 mighty men of valor join Achish and his army, and they start marching. It's a 3-day journey from where they are to where the battle's going to be. And when they get to the place where the battle's at, and they start setting up camp, the other princes of the Philistines look around and start asking questions about who's all these extra men? Where in the world they come from? And Achish proudly says to the other princes of the Philistines, oh, this is David. He's on our side. And they start asking questions like, is this the David that Israel sings about, that Saul killed his thousands, but David his 10,000? Yeah, this is him. Well, wait a minute. Saul is across the valley with his army, and he's here with us. If we start a war and Saul's on that side and he's on this side, they'll wipe us all out. He can't stay. You got to send him home. Achish argued. No. He's good. He promised me. He gave me his word. He's always kept his word. He's an honorable man. He won't turn on us. No, send him home. And when Achish comes to tell David, you're not welcome, you got to go home, he gets irate. I promised you I'd do it, and I promise you I will do it. But what David doesn't know is the day of that battle, the day it starts, Saul dies, Jonathan dies, and all of Israel is defeated at that battle. So David had deliberately through his life made sure that he didn't touch God's anointed. But he got to a place he decided that was okay. And God had to intervene to keep it from happening. David, he was so he was so angry and bitter and resentful that it affected his thinking. They didn't even think it necessary to leave somebody in charge of their city to make sure no enemy could come in and cause a problem while all the army is gone. So while they're leaving and marching, the army comes. They capture Ziklag, Gath, all the surrounding cities. There's no men there. They pillage the cities, take their children, all that they own, their possessions, and burn them to the ground. So David is now told to leave. Before the sun comes up tomorrow, take your men and go. You're not welcome. And angrily, David takes his men and leaves, never realizing that his decisions has cost him a whole lot of problems. And so they start home. And 3 days later, when they cross that last hill, they see smoke coming out of their city. And when they get inside their city, they discover that their city has been burned to the ground and there's not one living thing inside that city. There's nothing dead. They didn't kill their animals. They didn't kill anybody. They took them. So the city is totally barren. There's nobody here. And the scripture says that Israel, that David's 600 mighty men of valor were so grieved that they wept till they had no strength left. They were so distraught. They lost their wives, their children, their possessions, their moms, their dads, their brothers, their aunts, uncles, the older people of their family. Everything's gone. Someone started asking a question. How could we miss it so bad? How could we get to this place where this kind of thing would be happening? And somebody started saying, it's David's fault. David didn't pray. David didn't ask God. David didn't inquire, is this the right thing to do or is this not the right thing to do? And because David didn't ask, we're here. Now we don't have children. We don't have our wives. Our parents are gone. All of our family that's with us, they're all gone and we have nothing. And 600 men picked up stones. And they start approaching David. And David now is in trouble. Now, book of Samuel says David encouraged himself in the Lord. David starts singing this song. And as he sings this song, he's watching 600 men approach him with stones. And these men who would turn his glory into shame are his nephews, his men he trusts. These are the men who are going to take his glory and make shame out of it. So David starts screaming at God, God, hear me. I'm in trouble. I need you right now. Pay attention. You know, one of the unique things about God is he don't have a chip on his shoulder. God is not offended by humanity. It doesn't matter how much man curses him, it doesn't offend God. So when David is screaming at God, he doesn't get offended. He doesn't get angry. He just reached into David's mind and started tripping a couple of memories. And David then starts repenting. Have mercy upon me and hear my prayer. He starts understanding. You enlarged me when I was in distress. The literal translation says, you built a door where no door existed when I was in trouble. When I got trapped in a corner, you gave me a way out. When a lion showed up, you empowered me with the strength necessary to kill it. When the bear showed up, he's a kid. When his parents sent him, his family, his dad and his brothers sent him to where they knew lions and bears roamed, hoping he would die. They knew where they were at. But he was sent there because he brought shame to the family. The brothers wanted him killed at birth. But Dad said, no. We don't know who the man is that caused this. So we'll just treat him worse than anybody else at the house. So all his life he was ridiculed, he was mocked, he was made fun of, he was harassed, he was slapped, he was beaten, he was sent to where animals were that could kill him, hoping that those animals would kill him. Now these 600 men have stones. He's having flashbacks. Now God's reminding him, when your whole family turned on you, I was always there. And I helped you out of every problem you ever got in your life, David. So instantly David starts remembering, and now he says, forgive me, have mercy upon me. But he still hasn't got, he's still got an irritation at 600 men. Why would you dare pick up stones? All you cared about was all the glory, the fame, and the money that we accumulated as a result. Then God keeps working on him. He gets a little arrogant. Know that the Lord has set apart him that's godly for himself. You're on the wrong side. It's like when someone does you wrong, you go get in their face and tell them, you hurt me really bad, but I'm going to forgive you. You're not forgiving them, you're getting even. It's called passive-aggressive behavior. It's the most aggressive form of behavior that exists. What you're really saying is, I'm going to heaven, you're going to hell. So David says, God knows. He knows who he says is godly. And David's claiming to be the godly person. God just keeps working. Now, David, be careful, David, what you're saying, because it's going to come back. And then he's going to say, stand in awe and sin not. The word awe literally translates to tremble violently with rage. To be so angry your body shakes. But sin not. So when is anger a sin? When is it not a sin? See, the problem is our world has taken our natural defensive mechanisms and turned them into sources of pleasure. So instead of us responding the way we should, we've learned to use it as a high. So that anger and fear become our drug of choice. And you say, I'm not afraid. Oh, you're probably not. However, you still use fear as a drug on a regular basis. Because what we've done is become adrenaline junkies. Well, that's the fear mechanism. We love fear. There's not an amusement park that would stay open if it didn't have a ride that terrified you. The longest ride's not the paddle boats or the kiddie cars. The longest ride's the one that's got a sign that says you got blood pressure problems, heart problems, and there'll be 20-something diseases. If you don't get on the ride. But it doesn't stop any. You never see anybody pausing to read the sign. Everybody knows it's there. They've read it. But we don't pay attention to it. You just go get in line. We love fear. It's addictive. It gives us a thrill. We like the adrenaline rush. We like to tempt death to see if death can conquer us because we think we're Superman. We can outrun speeding bullets and stop trains and jump over tall buildings. No, we think we have this incredible ability to do things we don't have the ability to do. Several years ago, my kids wanted to go to Astroworld. They're in the middle teens. My wife and I didn't have anything to do, so sure, let's go. So we go to Astroworld, and they've just created a brand new ride. It's really not a ride, but it's one of those thrill things. It's a 20-foot diameter piece of steel pipe that has been bolted to a concrete slab, and it goes straight up in the air about 150 feet, 200 foot. Off the top of that pipe is a steel plate that's round. It's round, and there's these I-beams that run out like spokes. And on the end of them are pulleys, and there's a cable that goes through the pulley, inside the pipe, and down to some kind of mechanism that you can't see. And attached to that cable is a bicycle seat with a cage. And they lower it to the ground, and you sit on the bicycle seat. The cage comes down over you, and it takes you up to the top, and it makes a funny sound. Whoop, whoop, whoop. On the third one, it releases you, and you free fall to the earth. Boom. And just before you smack the ground, they put the brakes on. If you didn't have herniated discs, you would have them by the time you got off, because that kind of sudden stop is going to put a whole lot of pressure on soft stuff that's going to yield. So my son sees it and says, "Oh, Dad, let's ride this." I said, "Anthony, I don't need this in my life today." He said, "Dad, you're not a man if you won't ride it." I said, "You can challenge my manhood all you want. I don't need this in my life today. But Dad, I want to ride it." "Okay, go get in line. You're going to wait? Look, the line says it's an hour and a half wait from where it's at right now. You're going to wait yeah. What are you going to do?" "I'm going to watch all these people." See, every chair had a camera. And they filmed you going up, and they filmed you coming down, and you could buy it when you got through if you had the courage to. So you can't see them at the top; they're too far up. But the camera zooms as they go up. It stays zoomed in on them. When they come down, you won't watch them. Well, I'm standing here about 15 minutes later, and I watched two people get in line. And I'm thinking, surely you read the sign. They had to have at least 3 of those diseases. Because this is not Grandma and Grandpa. This is great-grandma and great-grandpa. So I'm thinking maybe they're lost and they don't know where their kids are, and they're trying to find them. They think they might be in this line, and so I watch them wiggle. They didn't go anywhere. They just got in the back of the line, and so they're not looking for anybody. And I'm thinking, surely they don't want to ride this. So my son comes out an hour and a half later and gets on the chair, takes him up, and I watch him up and down. I even offered to buy him the video, but he didn't want anybody to see what he looked like. When he got off of it, I said, "You want to do that again?" No, Dad, I don't ever want to do that again in my life. Well, he says, let's go. He didn't want to be reminded of what he just did. Let's go. I said, no, we're going to wait a few minutes. He said, no, Dad, come on, let's go. I said, no, we need to wait a few minutes. He said, why? I said, look in line. He said, what are you talking about? Look right over there by that post. Dad, they're not going to ride this, are they? It appears they are. Let's watch. So he stood beside me, and we watched as great-grandma and great-grandpa got on chair 8 and 9, and they rode it straight up. You can watch them talk to each other as they go up, and you can read some of their lips and understand some things they're saying to each other, and they're convincing each other this is a good idea, and they're going to have a lot of fun. I get to the top, whoop, 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 and when it triggered, she nearly lost her false teeth. They are half out of her mouth and half in her mouth. Her eyes are huge, and she needs to scream, but she cannot scream because if she screams, she's going to lose them, and they're going to be busted to pieces when they hit the ground. So, and if you look at he's screaming like a little kid. He's cussing, and he said, oh, and they plunge all the way to the ground, and just before they hit, they put the brakes on. Now, you would think that their natural reaction after getting off of that would be, honey, we probably ought to go home. We might ought to get the kids because we just lost 10 years of our life, so we probably don't have much of life left. She looked at him. He looked at her. She grinned real big. Said, let's do it again. And they got back in line. Now, whether you realize it or not, I just set you up big time. See, your world has so convinced you that this stuff is okay that you don't have a clue when you're in trouble. Because fear and anger is now our source of pleasure. When our lives get in positions that could be destroyed, we think it's time to party. We don't know when this is a bad time. Our world tells us we don't have to do anything. We don't have to fix it. We don't have to change it. We don't have to do one thing. We have rights. So we think we have rights that everybody else needs to meet. I used to hear a question in Pentecost. The question I heard repeatedly thousands of times in the 90s, early 2000s. Is this a heaven or hell issue? I don't hear that question anymore. The question I hear now is, Brother Hughes, don't you think I have a right to be happy? We don't even care if we're going to heaven. We think happiness is our right. So our world has so confused us that we don't understand why God put anger and fear in us to start with. So God put anger and fear in us to let us know we're in danger, not to have a good time. So God put it there so we'd ask ourselves a question. And the question is, why do I perceive danger? What's dangerous in this environment? Where's the threat at? What's causing this threat in my life? And whatever that threat is, I've got to do something to change it or fix it because that threat's going to wreck my life. Now, our world's teaching us it's time to have a party or a good time, a high. And anger and fear become our drug of choice. Why? Because you get a higher high than crack, crank, meth. Any other synthetic you can put in your body can't give you the high that anger and fear does. It has no crash. You're not going to get up with a hangover tomorrow when fear and anger shows up. David don't know he's in trouble, but then he realizes, I got a problem. What's my problem? Well, I'm only 29 years old. I'm not even king. How am I going to go to battle with these 600 men in the future? When we start to war, am I going to see stones or am I going to see people? See, the problem that our world doesn't teach us how to address or to overcome is the fact that you forgive, but you will never forget. And the day you forgive is the day you start managing memories for the rest of your life, because that memory is not going to disappear. It's not going away. God don't erase it. There's no rag called selective amnesia. You just rub off things you don't want to remember. When you forgive someone, from that day forward, when you see them, you got to manage all the resentment, bitterness going to show back up, and you got to not see stones. You got to see people. See, David now has a problem. All he can see is men with stones in their hand. But when God started talking to him, he said, stand in awe and sin not. Commune with your own heart upon your bed and be still. See, we need to listen to the voice talking to us, because it's that voice talking to us that will keep us out of trouble and out of harm's way. If we'll listen to what God is saying. See, God speaks to everybody in this room. Whether you want to admit he does or not, he speaks to everybody in this room. He put a conscience in you, and that's his pulpit he preaches from. So when God wants to talk to you, he's going to trigger your conscience. He's going to trigger your heart. You better commune with your conscience when you go to sleep at night. Before you close your eyes, you need to start letting your conscience speak to you, so it won't let you do things that's going to harm or hurt or injure other people. And you got to work on your flesh and who you are every day of your life, because your world says it's okay to do these things. It's okay to not let them go. It's okay not to release them. It's okay not to forgive them. I've heard statement made thousands of times from people, and that's not an exaggeration. Statement I hear on a regular basis is, you don't know what they did to me. And my response is, it don't matter. Why? Because it's over. It's history. You can't change it. You don't get a different outcome. It doesn't change anything about it. You just have to forget it and let it go. See, that memory is going to keep coming back. The problem with memories are they're not photographs. See, I have a memory of the Grand Canyon that I don't even like to think about. When people talk about the Grand Canyon, it's not a pleasant memory to me. The reason it's not a pleasant memory to me is because I took a busload of 55 teenagers to Flagstaff, Arizona, to compete in national competition for a Christian school. And I drove them. I was also their principal and administrator and their assistant pastor, but I drove them with other adults, and we had a busload. And they wanted to see the Grand Canyon. And so we're in Flagstaff. It's about an hour and a half away, 2 hours away. So got them all on the bus, drove them over to the Grand Canyon, and And I let them out, and I'm parking the bus, and I get it parked because you can't just park it anywhere. It's too big. So I finally get it parked, and I walk up, and all I see is the bottom of shoes. And I see two kids, one of them holding on to each, looked like each shoe, but it wasn't a shoe, it's a leg. And they're holding this kid over the side. Oh, he didn't irritate them so that they wanted to throw him over, and they weren't trying to teach him a problem. He wanted to take a picture. I wanted to scream, but I know if I did, they'd drop him. So I don't like to think about the Grand Canyon because it's not a good memory. It may be a beautiful sight. See, memories don't just record what you saw. Every emotion you felt is recorded too. So when your brain triggers the memory, it goes and gets every detail of it and puts it back together. It's stored in different parts of the brain. It's not all stored in the same location. The auditory part's stored in one place, the smell's somewhere else, the touch somewhere else. It's divided into 5 sections. Actually 6, the visual part. So, or 5. See, touch, feel, taste. So it puts it all back together. So if you cried the first time, you'll cry the second time, third time, fourth time, 100th time, 10,000th time. You got angry the first time, you're going to get angry again because it's a memory. And we think God's going to erase all that. God's going to take care of it. And David's telling us, no, wait a minute. There's a sacrifice called righteousness, which is the price you have to pay to do what's right. That sacrifice of right, offer the sacrifice of right. There's no sacrifice called righteousness in the Scripture. It's not a turtle dove. It's not a lamb. It's not a ram. It's not a cereal offering. It's not a way. There's no sacrifice called righteousness. Righteousness is the cost of doing what's right. So to do what's right, you got to pay a price. What's the price? First of all, you can't transfer pain. Somebody hurts you, you can't hurt them enough to make yours go away. It doesn't matter what they've done. You can't hurt them enough to make your pain go away. If you can hang him up by his feet and take a scalpel and just slit his skin deep enough to penetrate those outer 3 layers of skin, take a pair of pliers and pull that skin off and listen at him scream as you pulled it. And then take vinegar and water and salt and alcohol and mix it all together in the bowl and rub it all over and listen to him scream. It wouldn't change 1 ounce of pain in your life. Our world's fed us a bunch of lies. So you can't see the stones. You got to see the people. If you don't learn how to see the people, you're going to live your life looking for stones, and it's going to be a life full of anger and life full of fear, and it's just going to keep building and going, and you'll never know what peace is. He said, I'm going to lay me down in peace and sleep. Why? Because thou, Lord, only makest me dwell in safety. And the only way the peace of God is going to show up is when you act like him. If I don't act like Jesus, I won't find his peace. One of the statements Jesus makes in the Sermon on the Mount is, blessed are the peace makers, right? Not seekers. See, our world's taught us to look for it, find it. Jesus said, create it. You're not going to find peace. You're going to create peace. How you're going to create peace? Well, you're not going to see the stones in their hands. You're going to see the person with the stone. And that stone is not, they're going to drop it. When you can choose to not let fear or anger control you, then you will drop the stones in your hand. Now, I need to point something out to you tonight. It may be a little harsh. If it is, I don't apologize. In John chapter 8, Jesus confronted with a woman caught in the act of adultery. They bring stones to stone her. Is that John 8? Jesus don't say a word to them. He just writes on the ground. And they all leave from the oldest to the youngest. A few verses later, the people who remained that were there to start with, that didn't come with the first, second crowd, neither did they leave with the second crowd. They were the ones there originally. Those people who were there, as Jesus confronted them, got angry. They not only got angry, they picked up stones to stone him. They're in the temple. They don't stock stones in the temple to stone people with. The only way those stones were available was the first crowd brought them. And they left without them and left them there. And what they brought became the resources for others to use to attack Jesus with. So you better be careful about the stones you bring. You may leave them. If you do, others will probably pick them up and use them. So that book's full of so many details we ignore and just overlook and act like don't exist. Adversity is going to happen. Jesus prophesied it's going to happen. When it happens, what's my response going to be? Am I going to pay the price of righteousness? You see, to love somebody requires them to irritate you, or you've never loved them. So when they irritate you, then we're going to see how much you love them, because you've never loved anybody till they tick you off. Then let's see how you love them. What's it going to cost you? What will it cost you to put on those 9 characteristics of the fruit of the Spirit? What does love cost? There's a price. What does joy cost? It's going to cost. There's a price. What does peace cost? There's a price. What does long-suffering cost? There's more of that irritation cost. You don't need to be long-suffering. There's not a whole lot of it. What does meekness cost? What does gentleness cost? What does faith cost? Every one of them's they have a price tag. So I've got to make a decision. When things happen, do I spend my life focused on them? Or do I make a decision, as an old man in prison did, about to be executed by Nero? And that old man would say, I have not quite apprehended that which I'm apprehended of, but this one thing I do. I don't have a hold of what has a hold of me, and I've tried all my life to get a hold of it. But here's what I can do, and here's what I will do. Forgetting those things which are behind, reaching towards those things which are before me. I will not allow yesterday to become the defining point of my life, nor the prophecy of my future. I will not allow things that happen to become the yoke around my neck or the chains that I live my life in. I will make a decision that says, no, I'm not letting that stuff. I will never allow myself to see the stone. I'll only allow myself to see the person. Our world's taught us all these cheap things and all these cheap ways out. You can't live life that way. You'll pay the price. The price, if you don't pay it, will keep repeatedly showing up until you do pay it. So wouldn't it be much easier just to learn the lesson to start with and let's move on to the next level so we don't have to keep repeating this one we keep going through? See, David tried to bargain his way out of God's judgment. He put on sackcloth and ashes. He tried to get God not to take the child. The child he produced by adultery and then executing the kids or the wife's rightful husband. He tried to get a different outcome. So that we think we can bargain with God. God, I'll do this for you. If I'll go to the whatever part of the world if you'll just take care of this problem right now. To overcome adversity, I have to become real, and I have to look at life realistically, and I have to take ownership. And if I'll take ownership, I'll change my world and the world of everybody around me. In the 40 years I've been doing this, that's the most difficult task to get people to do. Simply take ownership. This is my problem. Not my wife's, not my kids, not my grandkids, not my brothers, sisters, it's not my friends, it's not my church. It's me. And I got to take ownership. And when I do, and I pay the price, sleeping in peace is the greatest asset of our life. I'll both lay me down in peace and sleep. For thou, Lord. One last little point, and this old man will shut up. Do you know why? Maybe I shouldn't say this. That filter's gone, so it's coming out anyway. You know why church is so important? Got any idea why it's so important? The reason is you can never get fear to leave until somebody can stand in front of you and see your world behind you. Because them being able to see the world behind you is what lets you know you're not being attacked and your survival instincts go away. So without a church and someone standing up here to preach, you have no clue you're safe. It takes two people to know you're safe. Not you looking one way and them looking the other. They have to be in front of you, and they have to look past you to see your world, and then they have to look past you to see, or you see their world and they see your world. And when they do, you watch their eyes. And if their eyes never show danger, because if there's danger back there, they'll show it. Then you'll let all your walls down. And when you let all your walls down, then God can show up, because he can't show up when you got walls built. So the most important part of church is not just us getting together, but it's the fact that safety can't happen until we're here and somebody can see us and we can see them. See, you tell me I'm safe. While I'm preaching, I'm watching your faces. If you notice, I watch the crowd because you let me know I'm safe. You're watching me, whether you think it or not, or realize it or not. You're watching me. If I start staring at the door and I get this startled look on my face, what are you going to do? You're going to instantly turn around and find out because I just told you your world's not safe. That's why church is so critical and so vital. If you want to take all the walls down so your life is not destroyed by your fear and anger, then you got to be in an environment where you don't have to use them. And that's peaceful. That's why when you come here, it is the safest place you can ever come, because you'll never hear God say, I told you so. If you'd listen to me, this wouldn't happen. I knew you'd do that. You're just a mistake. I don't like you. I hate you. I wished you weren't born. See, that never happens here. You always walk away feeling like He loves you more than anybody else. He cares for you more than anybody else. Are you willing to pay that price? Please stand. Gracious Father, thank you today for your incredible word and all the truths that are hidden in it. It is impossible for us to search out all the riches and the truths that are there. There are so many. We can spend our life trying to find them. And when we think we've got them found, we'll discover that there's still more. Thank you for your word that's forever settled, which is the light unto our feet. It's the lamp unto our pathway. It is your word that has the power to change our lives. It's your word that teaches us about you, and it reveals us. Lord, let your word forever be established in our lives. Thank you for its power and its ability to affect us. You change our nature when you fill us with your Spirit. We go from a nature of sin by nature to a nature of sin by choice. We don't quit sinning, but when we do sin, it's because we chose to, not because we couldn't help it. Because you changed our nature. We did become a new creature, and that new creature is no longer controlled by sin. It can control sin if it chooses. Lord, I pray revelation happens in the life of your people. And I pray that you'd step into that pulpit that I can't preach in, and you'd start preaching and talking to your children, because you know where all the things are that's causing them their struggles and their relationship with you and their relationship with each other. So, Lord, I pray today that you'd start preaching to those men who brought stones to stone the woman. You never said a word to them. But yet they heard your voice because you began to speak. And as you began to speak through their conscience, they all left from the oldest to the youngest. So, Lord, I pray you'd start speaking to us. Let us hear what your word has to say, what your voice has to say to us, because you placed that thing in our life that gives us the ability to hear you on a daily basis. Speak to us today, Jesus. Lord, talk to our hearts. I pray your children wouldn't be afraid to give you an invitation. I pray that they wouldn't be afraid to say, Jesus, take me by the hand. Walk with me through the corners of my mind. Take me to those places where things are stored that are tormenting me and causing me all kinds of chaos. And hold my hand as I'll open those doors, and I free whatever's behind that door so that my life can be free. And then I can live in peace because you and you alone make me safe. Bless your children today, Jesus. In Jesus'